組は日本最大級の建築家ネットワークアーキテクツスタジオジャパンの提供でお送りします。
Casa Bella è una rivista che ormai ha 100 anni di vita. Sulle pagine di questa rivista è passata la storia dell'architettura del Novecento. Il nostro augurio, la nostra speranza, il nostro impegno è che Casa Bella anche nel prossimo secolo continui a documentare ciò che l'architettura internazionale verrà producendo e offrendo. Lo faremo con la massima serietà, perché la serietà è ciò che merita questa antica e nobile professione che gli architetti praticano.
Casa Bella, Japan.
国内外のデザイナーやアーティストが創造する空間美学。人々の輝ける暮らしを求め、創造という終わりなき道をひたすら走り続ける。建築家とは創造のアスリートなのかもしれない。今回のフォーカスアスリートはスペシャルプレゼンテーションとして海外の建築家たち自らさまざまな建築観を披露していただきます。今回登場していただく建築家はフランク・ゲーリー。プリツカー賞、高松宮殿下記念世界文化賞など世界的に高い評価を受ける作品を数多く発表し、現代アメリカを代表する最もセンセーショナルな建築家の一人である。代表作にスペイン・ビルバオのグッゲンハイム美術館、ロサンゼルスのディズニーコンサートホールなどがあり、その遊び心やユーモアに満ちた自由奔放な造形は現代社会にエネルギーを与え続けている。今回は彼のさまざまなエピソードを取材し、世界の建築界をリードしてきたその訳を存分に実感する貴重な時間となった。まずは若き日のゲイリー氏の軌跡をたどる。
Came here to LA in 1947 from Canada, Toronto, where I was born. I didn't know too much about architecture at that point. We were family very poor. I was a truck driver delivering furniture. I took night classes and extension because I had to work all day. I studied ceramics. Was the first thing that I got very excited about. I became the assistant to the ceramic teacher. He was building a house by Rafael Soriano, who was at that time a very minimalist architect, did very minimal glass and steel building, beautiful. And he invited me to the construction site. And he watched me with watching this architect. And when I came back to the class the next day, he said, "I think you should be an architect." So I said, "Okay, what do I have to do?" And he enrolled me in a class at night at USC, University of Southern California.
さらに彼のデザイン性に影響を与えたものも存在した。
I loved it from the beginning. I loved architecture. I remembered then that when I was in Toronto, I went to a lecture in 1946, and a gentleman with white hair was showing a bentwood chair, and I was very moved by it in 1946, but I didn't know much about architecture or anything, but this stuck in my mind. And so when I started studying architecture, I realized that man was Alvar Aalto. And I visited Aalto's studio in the 70s and asked them whether he gave a talk at the University of Toronto in 46. And they looked in the record, and yes, so it was him. So it was stuck in my head, Aalto, and I started looking at his work. And coming from Canada, and especially northern Canada, where we lived for 5 years, with the northern lights and snow and cold, wood was very much a reassuring material in those climates. And I looked at Aalto's work, and I found that he was trying to create warmth in buildings, humanizing with brick and wood and things like that. So that was very inspirational.
また建築の普遍性にヒントを与えた建築家もいた。
I was very interested in Schindler because it was sociologically comprehensive and relevant. You know, recessions go up and down, so usually people are frugal and want to build frugally, and at the time he was working with wood. It was very human and yet very sculptural and very different than everybody else. It wasn't a kind of a normal language. It had echoes of the Japanese influence, but it also had Frank Lloyd Wright. It was sort of very personal Schindler, and I got to know him and spent time with him looking at his buildings and stuff.
また一流を極めるゲイリー氏だが、建築を学ぶ場は意外なところにあった。
As soon as I graduated school, I was drafted into the U.S. Army, and I became a infantry soldier. And because I had a bad knee, they put me in the typing school, and I wasn't very good at that. I was sent to Fort Benning, and then I was sent to Fort McPherson and Third Army headquarters in Atlanta, and given the job to design day rooms and post theaters and stuff like that. So I got a taste of practice while in the Army because we had to work with the contractors, we had to order furniture, build. And I got a lot of experience in that year and a half, I think.
ここでもう一つ建築を学ぶ上で貴重なエピソードを語っていただいた。
I then applied to Harvard in city planning, not architecture. Because my politics have always been sort of lefty, social. That's why I became an architect. Socially relevant, make better world, blah, blah, blah. And I went to Harvard, and it was supposed to be for 2 years, but by then I was married, I had 2 kids. I didn't have any money, we had a hard time. And the planning school was very much about economics and politics and not much about architecture. At the same time, there was an urban design school with Jose Luis Sert and next to this. And I tried to transfer and they wouldn't let me. I had to go home and reapply, which I didn't have the money to do. And so I just dropped out of the planning school, but I was committed to the year of tuition and they wouldn't let me off. So I had to pay that tuition. And they gave me a chance to attend any classes I want for no credit. So they gave me a little card and I could go in. And for a guy like me, that turned out to have been a really incredible thing. Because I attended the classes with J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man from the A-bomb. And there were classes from Barbara Ward, Hugh Gateskill, the British, and then I attended urban design classes. I listened to lectures by Gropius and Sert, and so I could be everywhere and have fun. And I took a class with Joseph Hudnut, who was the former dean at Harvard, and he was let go and Gropius took over. So Hudnut went to MIT, and I took a class with him where we walked through the streets of Boston, and he talked about the culture of architecture in Boston. And it was very important opened the door about urban design issues, how you relate to existing buildings and stuff. What do you do with the brick apartments in Boston? How do you build a new building next to it and so on?
ゲイリー氏の芸術的感性の源、それは一体どこから来たのだろうか。
It was like artists of that time were sort of like, if you go to the abstract expressionists, they used to hang around at the Cedar Bar. They hung out with de Kooning and all of them, Rothko, and so there was a social element to the abstract expressionists. There was a social element to the LA scene, and so I was part of that. I wasn't making art. I never thought of myself as making art. I still don't. I don't think of it as, but it's certainly inspired by and encouraged by, and it's a language thing. We were evolving a language that was sort of LA, and we're able to find inspiration in each other's work, I think. Rules for architecture still exist. That there's a right way to do things. And, you know, I swear to you, there is not. I will die with that idea. There's no right way. There's only a good way, which respects people, which respects people the most.
今回のフォーカスアスリートスペシャルプレゼンテーションはここまで。次回もフランク・ゲーリー氏に登場していただき、ディズニーコンサートホールなどの代表作や日本文化との衝撃的な出会いについてお聞きしています。ご期待ください。